Hello, it's Riikka Kovasin here with a new video. This time I'm making some holiday decorations. The inspiration for these little baubles, let's say, came from these wooden bases I found in a craft store. So I wanted to create some kind of holiday embellishments for those. I chose to go with some of my favorite things and ended up, well, they are a little bit different holiday decorations, let's say. Before recording this, I already treated the wooden bases with white crackle paint because this one needs to be air dry, so it has the great crackling effect. You really can't use a heat tool, that doesn't create a nice effect at all, so that's why I did it beforehand. Now I'm treating the bases with some ink and highlighting those little crackles. For that I'm using my favorite ink, Vintage Photo. I use the inking tool around the edges and then use them as kind of watercolor and apply the ink with a brush so it soaks through the cracks to the wood and thus makes the cracks look darker and highlights those. When I have those done, I then turn my attention to the inner pieces. These are like little wooden picture frames in a way, because you can remove the center, and I'm choosing this wallpaper like paper to put inside to collage that to them. So I'm first drawing the shape using one of the inner pieces as kind of a stencil, and then cut them loose and then collage them to the wooden bases. While the bases are drying, I turn my attention to the embellishments or layering elements. The first thing I'm doing is picking up this beautiful stamp by Stampendous, but I'm actually not interested to the bird this time, but moreover I'm wanting to use those pine cones that are in the stamps. So I just ink part of the stamp them to a piece of cream colored cardstock, and then start coloring them in using the same ink I already have on my table, so Vintage Photo. I add a couple of layers kind of the same way, using the ink as watercolor, but layering them so there's going to be a darker area where there's double layer of the ink, and then just a little bit lighter where I just have one layer. After I have those colored, I let them dry for a while and then cut them loose. Then it's back with the backgrounds. I'm using again, the same ink to ink around the edges, create that a little bit distressed or warm look for those. I then bring out a stencil and another distress oxide color this time, and add a little bit of pattern to the paper, but you can't really actually see the pattern in the ready bubbles because there's so much covering it. But again, it's not always about the end result, it's about the process. And then it's time to put those bubbles back together, so in goes the inner pieces, and then I'm adding just some white touches to the pine cones using a Posca marker, so white acrylic marker. I'm just highlighting that snow. I then chose some sitting little paper dolls and perched them on top of the pine cones. I also cut ready some pieces out of old lace to be added to the composition or the layering, and then start building the actual layers. I'm using foam tape to make the dimensional cluster, let's say. The biggest issue is the plant I'm using, because it's a plastic kind of faux plant and it's wanting to keep its shape, let's say, so it's a little bit springy. So in the end, when I have everything done, I actually let these dry under a little bit of weight, so I put something on top before the project kind of dries then to this shape, as the gel medium takes a little bit of time to dry. That's the adhesive I'm using to build these. My intention was to use just a pine cone as the base for the character to sit upon, but I quickly realized that that's a little bit too little, especially when I want it to be a little bit visible underneath the character. So instead I added a piece of corrugated cardboard as the base layer and then the pine cones on top. So this is the way I get them to be a little bit more visible afterwards. I also add one candle to each one and use that really thick gel medium to get everything nicely put. You can see me do one composition here and then I've got the excess off, but I'm repeating the same process to the other two as well. And in the next stage you then see all of them three ready, or ready for the next step. As you can see here, well, it's no wonder that the background, the little layer, inked layer I put there, doesn't show because, well, there's not that much of the background showing anyway. I want to highlight that green though, so I'm using a distress crayon to add some green touches to the paper dolls, thus kind of giving them back the green they are missing, because the background is now in the shadow, so it's not that visible anymore. As a finishing touch, I then add some crystals to each one, kind of trying to give them a little bit of icy shine. And then I'm adding a sentiment to each using a sticker book. But the combinations I chose, they are a little bit maybe sarcastic or maybe even melancholic now that I look at them, because the little boy who is saying this is jolly enough, he looks so serious, so that's kind of a odd juxtaposition, let's say. Maybe they go to a Finnish sense of humor or something, because I'm not sure why I chose these, but they seem to fit. I hope you like this process video. If you did, please consider subscribing and hit that bell sign to be notified when a new video comes live. Thanks again so much, and I'll be seeing you within a week. Wishing you a very nice weekend. Thanks. Bye.